first time I saw it was at Harvard Business School. It just blew me away. When he goes out to that runway, and then you see the bombers coming in. I think it's got a lot of good life lessons in it. Sets up very clearly this kind of two types of leadership.
One being the touchy-feely guy, and Gregory Peck, who was clearly a hard-ass.
But he's not a hard-ass.
Smoke, Ernie?
Think about the scene where he's coming to take command. The staff car pulls up to the gate, and he's riding shotgun with the driver. And I think he even calls him by his first name. He gets out, he smokes a cigarette, he gives a cigarette to the sergeant, then he throws the cigarette away, gets in the backseat of the staff car, and he's a general.
All right, Sergeant.
He understands his Dharma. He understands what he has to do. He understands that for the betterment of those guys, for them to fulfill their task, he has to do it. Dharma is the combination of duty, fate, and destiny. For me to fulfill my Dharma, I have to fulfill my duty.
Rest. I've been sent down here to take over what has come to be known as a hard luck group. Well, I don't believe in hard luck. So we're going to find out what the trouble is. We're going back to fundamentals. And I can tell you now one reason I think you've been having hard luck. I saw it in your faces last night. I can see it there now. You've been looking at a lot of air lately. You think you ought to have a rest. In short, you're sorry for yourselves. Now, I don't have a lot of patience with this what are we fighting for stuff. We're in a war, a shooting war. We've got to fight. And some of us have got to die. I'm not trying to tell you not to be afraid. Fear is normal. But stop worrying about it and about yourselves. Stop making plans. Forget about going home. Consider yourselves already dead.
I think it's a very simple film with a very simple, powerful message that modernity is based around emotionalism, which you think is helping everybody, but in fact is not allowing them to fulfill their destiny, fulfill their fate, even though that fate and that destiny may be their own personal destruction.
A lot of your ideas are about tearing things down, war and destruction.
I believe that you need some fairly radical restructuring of this and rethinking of this. The permanent political class that control our country is going to stay exactly like it is until you have true disruption. It can't be a pillow fight. You need some killers. You get some killers, you're gonna see some change. We all know what the problems are. Do you have the guts to do it? Trump had it, and that's why he's president of the United States. Can I bring up one last thing? Just 12 o'clock, one thing I thought of is that in the motivation of the men to focus on the mission and not themselves, he was prepared to not be loved. In fact, to be hated.
If you want to affect change, the important thing is to
affect change. Yeah. I used to tell the guys at Breitbart, Napoleon's saying to his marshals of France, when you set out to take Vienna, take Vienna. I'd gone to Telluride on and off for years. I don't even think I knew at the time that you were going to have an interview with McNamara afterwards. I was just there to see the film. I want to at least start to produce these myself and start to make films like this. Seeing Fog of War at Telluride was the inspiration. It's all you to blame.
Yeah, why not?
If you go back to the 12 o'clock Hyatt, to this Quatsin hut where those pilots were, that's kind of the populist side. The working men of America. But then you see your film and you understand the precision daylight bombing and flying in a fortress and all that was conceived and thought of by guys like McNamara. What worked against Germany and Imperial Japan clearly was the exact wrong thing for how you fight a war against people trying to get their independence and their freedom. You can see in McNamara the personification of globalization. It's that scientific, engineering, managerial elite that everything's a set of math to them.
This is all out of Harvard Business School.
It's all out of Harvard Business School. They had this concept, I think it's become a radical concept about the maximization of shareholder value. The whole beginning of the shipping of jobs. Everything could have a mathematical base to it, or have a logical or reason base to it.
I look at The Fog of War as a very despairing film, where McNamara, very near the end, says, rationality will not save us.
I took it a different way. It's a Greek tragedy. I took it as hopeful, and here's why.
What's hopeful about Greek tragedy?
Well, because you learn the lessons of it, right? His rationality can't save us. Didn't save us. Actually buried us into Vietnam much, much deeper.
What makes us omniscient? Have we a record of omniscience? We are the strongest nation in the world today. I do not believe we should ever apply that economic, political, or military power unilaterally. If we had followed that rule in Vietnam, we wouldn't have been there.
We were a hardcore Democratic family. I went to a Catholic military prep school. Vietnam tore that community apart. We had a football coach, Mr. Monahan. His boy got killed in Vietnam. Some of these families, they never recovered from that. I'm a paper boy at the time and delivering the papers every day, and you see 200,000 troops and 250,000 troops and 300,000 troops. And you're a patriot, so you still believe it, but you see the families destroyed. So I'm at West Point. My daughter's sophomore year, it's 2008, I think it is. It's a tough story to tell. The West Point girls volleyball team was going to get new uniforms. And they bring the uniforms in boxes off to the side, and the girls are practicing this huge old dirigible hangar where the volleyball team plays from the 1920s. Looking at this, look at the West Point girls, and I look over at the boxes. I just kind of go over and look at the new uniforms. They're sealed. Made in Vietnam. Made in Vietnam. I lost it. Made in Vietnam. 50,000 dead, 100,000 wounded, families torn apart. The whole Southeast Asia, 10, 20, 30 million people murdered, right? What was it all for? What was Monahan's kid? What was that for? Made in Vietnam. With all the jobs lost, the globalization, it was an incredibly clarifying moment for me.
20th century, we decided that these individual nation states at war with each other would produce disaster, and that some solution had to be contrived.
When you say we, what do you mean, we? We didn't decide that at all. I completely and totally disagree with that.
Well, I know you do.
No, but it wasn't the common man that got us into World War I, and in World War II, and in Vietnam, and all the other wars that have been fought. It's Moynihan's son that's always the recipient of all the crap. When you say these nation states, it's the elites that got us into that mess, and then they came up with some sort of supra-national apparatus that's going to take care of it. No. I disagree 100%. They are the ones that drove the destruction of the 20th century. And the reason I'm a populist, I've gone to the elite institutions. I was in the United States Navy as an officer, went to Harvard Business School, went to Georgetown and got a master's in foreign affairs, was in all the boardrooms, went to Hollywood. And here's the one thing I can tell you. If you gave me the choice between being governed by the first 100 people to show up in red ball caps at a Trump rally versus the first 100 guys that walk into Davos with their tickets, I'll take the working class people because they have more humanity and more, they understand the world, and they have grit and determination, and they've had to deal with all the world dumps on them.
But what good does it do to throw all of the DACA people out of America? What good does it do to allow corporations to pollute the environment? Is this populism? Or is this something much uglier?
Uglier being what?
Serving big business and the rich. It's anti-populism. That's what bothers me. That's what makes me think you're crazy.
And why?
Why? Because I think there's an inherent contradiction in the views that you hold. Do you just want to destroy everything?
You may hate my guts, and you may hate what I stand for. But if we don't allow some way for this system to spread the wealth, we're going to have a revolution in this country. It is coming, as night follows day.
Do movies provide an alternative reality, something that is more powerful than the real world?
In the Reagan film, I take a lot of time in talking about how our idealized version of America was done by those great filmmakers in the 20s and 30s, 40s and 50s. When the legend becomes more powerful, print the legend.
Do you think maybe there's a chance we still might find her?
Engine will chase that thing till he thinks he's chased it enough. Then he quits. Same way when he runs. Seems like he never learns there's such a thing as a critter who'll just keep coming on. So we'll find him in the end, I promise you. We'll find him. Just as sure as the turning of the earth.
Who do you see yourself as in these movies? Gregory Peck, John Wayne?
I've never actually sat there and go, oh, I'm the Gregory Peck character, but clearly in the films that I love and I watch over and over again, there's a certain, type of individual. Remember, the John Wayne character in The Searchers is kind of an outcast.
It's hard to believe they're white.
They ain't white anymore. They're Comanche. Or your casualties.
I'm clearly drawn to those characters and the way they comport themselves. Also, the way they never give up. You know, the honey badger nature of just don't quit. That famous video, he doesn't care and he doesn't quit. He's got all these terrible habits. He's relentless. He will not give up. And I think the thing went out and, had like 100 million views. We used to watch it at Breitbart. Honey badger doesn't give a shit, right? Because he doesn't give a shit. You just got to do what you got to do. We didn't care if we played by the rules, or particularly against the Republican establishment that was so straight-laced at the time.
When did you realize that you could turn it into politics? Was there an epiphany? Was it at Breitbart?
2008, the financial crisis in the fall, and then President Obama coming in January, and the reaction to that, the bailouts and everything like that. And I saw in the Tea Party really what would become this populist movement. It would need a platform that could get its stories out. And in Breitbart and Andrew, you had a real firebrand, a firebrand who knew culture. One of his themes was that culture is upriver from politics. Just like in 12 O'Clock High, he made it a central part of our mission. Anthony Weiner at that time was as much a cultural figure as a political figure. One of the most promising young politicians in the country, right? They are talking about Anthony Weiner as being a legitimate candidate for president of the United States.
We see it in the United States Senate every single day where members say, we want amendments, we want debate, we want amendment, but we're still a no. And then we stand up and say, oh, if only we had a different process, we'd vote yes. You vote yes if you believe yes. You vote in favor of something if you believe it's the right thing. If you believe it's the wrong thing, you vote no. We are following a procedure. I will not yield to the gentleman, and the gentleman will observe regular order. The gentleman will observe regular order.
I was down in Richmond with my dad at 11 o'clock on a Friday night watching the nightly news. We get a phone call, can we get on the bridge line right away? That something's happened with Weiner. He's at home watching the Washington Capitals game, and he tweets out, he had thought he was direct messaging her, but he had hit the wrong thing on Twitter and put it out on his entire Twitter feed, but only up for a nanosecond. He took it down immediately. In fact, nobody ever asked later, how did we actually capture that? Because you just couldn't possibly capture it unless you had somebody basically on watch, and they did. Some people approached Andrew that were kind of volunteers and were following this, really put him on 24-hour watch. Andrew immediately went out publicly. It got to be a firestorm, but Weiner immediately came back and said, I've been hacked. This would be the death blow for the company. If we had gone out and done this and actually made it up or it was not true, Breitbart's over. It was, I think, on that Monday or Tuesday that other people started coming forward. In fact, someone approached us, a guy had approached us with the pictures. It was a classic Andrew Breitbart. Drop one, let him respond. Drop the other, let him deny it. We got down to the fourth picture, the money shot, so to say.
The dick pic.
His Johnson, right? He basically called surrender. Andrew was in the hotel right next door. Complete coincidence. Weiner's backstage, I think, or what I heard, trying to talk his wife into coming up on stage with him. Andrew comes in the back, and all the national media turns to Andrew Breitbart. They're asking him questions. The guys have their microphones. They say, hey, we can't hear your answer. We can't hear your answer. Go up on stage. And Andrew Breitbart walks up.
I'm here coincidentally. I just arrived at LaGuardia because of media requests, and as I got into my hotel, I'm Andrew Breitbart, by the way. It is news, my friend. It is news. And I know of countless other websites and news organizations that would put this out there.
If you wrote a script and pitched that in Hollywood, they would laugh you out of the room. I mean, here you watch it on national TV, and Andrew Breitbart walks up to the Anthony Weiner press conference with global media there and literally takes it over and has a command performance.
And you would have no way of knowing where this would lead.
No, he said at the time that in 2016, in the final 2 months, that Anthony Weiner, Uma Abedin, the Breitbart operation, the guy that followed Andrew after he died. It's like I said, if you wrote that script, people would throw you out of the room. It'd be ridiculous. I really didn't know Trump. He knew me as the head of Breitbart. The Mercers just went to Trump and said, you're going to lose by 15 or 20 points if you kept going down this path. After I'd met with him, I went to the campaign headquarters for the first time. Because I'd never been at campaign headquarters in my life. So I get there at like 7 o'clock at night in Trump Tower, the 14th floor. And so I expected young people to be walking around with polling data and, all these smart guys looking at targets where we're going to go to. And I'm thinking I'm going to walk into some Robert Redford, the Candidate movie. And I get up there, it's totally dark. There's nobody there. It's like it's 7 o'clock at night. And there's one guy. And I said, where is everybody? And he goes, well, it's Sunday. And I go, yeah, I got that, but where are they? And he says, well, they'll all be back tomorrow. They don't really work weekends. When I take over, he's somewhere between 12 and 16 points down. Double digits down, most of the battleground states. Hillary Clinton's really not even campaigning anymore, just raising money. Then when I'm announced, it's like the Trump campaign's so out of business. This is just Trump getting vengeance by getting this mad bomber who's just going to wreak vengeance on all his enemies.
The mad bomber being you.
Yes, and it's the exact opposite. All we did is said, hey, we got to be maniacally focused, simplify everything, make her the spokesman and the guardian of a corrupt and incompetent status quo, an elite. And you make Trump the agent of change that President Obama wasn't. We could see his message was resonating, and all you had to do was channel that in the right way.
And yes, we will build a wall. Have to. We have to.
Remember, we had a great canary in the mine shaft. We had Brexit. Nigel Farage says Brexit would not have happened if there was not Breitbart London. I can see Brexit and 2016 are inextricably linked. They're inextricably linked. It's just going to be 3 verticals we're going to focus on. Number 1, we've got to stop mass illegal immigration and limit legal immigration to get our sovereignty back and protect our workers. Number 2, we have to bring manufacturing jobs back, basically from Asia. And number 3, we have to get out of these pointless foreign wars. So her thing when she came out was Breitbart's racist, Bannon's a white supremacist. I walked in, it was like the 5th day. I go into the war room with all these TV sets, and she's in Reno giving her first speech. And she's giving a speech on the alt-right and Breitbart and Steve Bannon. I'm going, she's running for president of the United States. I said, she's walked into the trap.
This is not conservatism as we have known it. This is not republicanism as we have known it. These are racist ideas, race-baiting ideas, anti-Muslim, anti-immigrant, anti-women, all key tenets making up the emerging racist ideology known as the alt-right, a fringe element that has effectively taken over the Republican Party.
If she's going to preach identity politics, and we preach populism and jobs and bringing manufacturing jobs back, we got it. For all their brilliance and all their money and all their professionalism, they don't have an understanding of what this election's about. And that's when I knew we had her.
Operator, can you keep this line
You have to have faith in your plan. That's one of the lessons of 12 O'Clock High.
So this is war.
It's absolutely war. At that level of politics, it's war. You're fighting for control of the greatest country in the world. It's war. War is 3 phases. Step 1, take the high moral ground so you can motivate people to fight. Number 2, leave a smoking hole of where your enemy is. And number 3, fill said hole with your stuff and your values. We're doing debate prep. The Washington Post calls Hope Hicks, gives her a transcript of some audio that's going to come out. I talked to the writer's editor. Get us the audio and let us check it, and we'll get back to you sometime next week. And this guy said, hey, look, it's going up in 5 minutes. The authentication process will be very quick. As soon as it went up, I knew it was going to be a huge issue. The Republican establishment, they were going to cut Trump loose to focus on the House and the Senate. We were going to do some sort of video or something that night, which we didn't get out till like midnight. You know, people say it was the hostage video.
I've never said I'm a perfect person, nor pretended to be someone that I'm not. I've said and done things I regret, and the words released today on this more than a decade-old video are one of them. There's a big difference between the words and actions of other people. We will discuss this more in the coming days. See you at the debate on Sunday.
On Saturday, we had called an all-hands high command meeting to be in Trump Tower in the penthouse. We kind of went around. Christie and Rudy give a traditional politician's response. Let's call 60 Minutes, have Melania on one side and Ivanka on the other, and you'll be in the middle and you'll beg forgiveness. I was sitting there just thinking that if he does that, it's over. I said they don't care about anything in Billy Bush. What they care about is they're losing their country, and they're losing their job, and they're losing their way of life. And if they see you as the instrument to reverse that, we're going to win, and we're going to win big. You have a 100% metaphysical certitude to win. What we ought to do is have a rally. Let's go to the Hilton Hotel and get 1,000 people, red hats, double down, triple down, and let's just do it. This is not Steve Bannon pushing him. His natural thing was to fight. The compromise was that we were going to go on ABC and David Muir, and we were going to do a live interview, kind of a middle ground between sitting on the sofa and apologizing and having a rally. We basically said, I don't care, I want to talk about build a wall. And as he got down to the conference room, tried to practice, said, I can't do this, and I'm not going to do this. Downstairs, there were thousands of people in the streets. Many of them anti-Trump. But there were a lot of deplorables down there in the red caps. He told the Secret Service right there in the room, he goes, I'm going down and see my people. He's going to go out and just hold a rally right there. Governor Christie pulled me aside and we had a little tete-a-tete. He blamed me for being the enabler. What he had argued up there was that this is not about the campaign. The campaign's over. If you go down this path of what this crazy guy's saying, you're going to not just lose this campaign and lose it by a historic number, but you're going to destroy your brand. And it'll have massive impact afterwards. And so Christie and I got into it, and I basically told him, the plane leaves at 11 o'clock tomorrow. If you're on the plane, you're on the team. You're not on the plane, you're not on the team. in that moment. I had people who would come as first-person testifiers of the actions of Bill Clinton and her actions as an enabler. So I had personal witnesses, Paula Jones and Catherine Willey and others. At about 4 o'clock on Friday, I called up and made sure that the women that were being filmed would be actually in St. Louis on Sunday.
So it was your idea to bring the women to the debate?
Yeah, 100%, yes. Went up to candidate Trump. Here's the plan. We're going to open the door and let the pack of jackals, opposition party media, come in thinking that they were seeing the end of the debate prep. And these women would just hit him with a fuselage at one time of, Bill Clinton raped me. And he goes, I love it. He took his seat in the middle. We opened the door to the media. They'd walked right into the trap. You could tell it gave him confidence.
Mr. Trump, you touched women without their consent. Mr. Trump, why did you say you touched women without consent, Mr. Trump?
Why don't y'all ask Bill Clinton that? Why don't y'all go ask Bill Clinton that? Go ahead and ask Hillary as well.
The debate before, they had allowed Mark Cuban to come down and sit in his line of sight, declaring him the entire time. I said, just go get him and put him back in the seat in darkness. It's 10 rows back. It's simple. Aisle seat, 10 rows. No, completely blown off. So this time, we're going to walk out the 4 women and put them in the VIP seats and make Bill Clinton on national TV walk past them. And so we just told the guys, hey, we got different VIPs. And they go, oh, no, it's impossible. You can't do that. Dude, 2 weeks ago, you gave me the speech about you don't have control over security. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. They're going to sit in those seats, and when he comes by, they're going to say whatever they're going to say, and you're going to live with it. And it got to be showtime. We've already rattled them enough. We did jujitsu, and we turned the Billy Bush thing around. It comes down to 1 or 2, maybe 3 moments the entire time, and you're going to make a decision under pressure, in the moment. And that decision is either going to lead to victory or defeat. And if you pick the wrong path, you'll look back in hindsight and see how your defeat came about.
It wasn't a perfect campaign. There is no such thing. But I was on the way to winning until the combination of Jim Comey's letter on October 28th and Russian WikiLeaks raised doubts in the minds of people who were inclined to vote for me but got scared off. Ask yourself this: within an hour or 2 of the Hollywood Access tape being made public, the Russian theft of John Podesta's emails hit WikiLeaks. The reason why I believe we lost were the intervening events in the last 10 days.
This just came out. WikiLeaks, I love WikiLeaks.
Hillary had no defense for her secret speeches to Wall Street and international banks that she hid from the public and which were exposed by WikiLeaks. The FBI has just sent a letter to Congress informing them that they have discovered new emails pertaining to the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's investigation.
What's interesting to me about this whole election, the moment that her emails became connected with Anthony Weiner's dick pics, she was done for. And you ran an ad. It's basically, I guess you call it from the Roy Cohn playbook. You call me a pervert. I'm not a pervert. You're a pervert.
Decades of lies, cover-ups, and scandal have finally caught up with Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is under FBI investigation again after her emails were found on pervert Anthony Weiner's laptop. Think about that. America's most sensitive secrets, unlawfully sent, received, and exposed by Hillary Clinton, her staff, and Anthony Weiner. Hillary cannot lead a nation while crippled by a criminal investigation. Hillary Clinton, unfit to serve.
The 16 candidates the Republicans had, whether you're a libertarian, whether you're a limited government conservative, whether you're a heritage guy, Rand Paul, Chris Christie, Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, all of them combined could not have beaten Hillary Clinton. It took a blunt force instrument. He understands that the modern world, particularly the modern political world, has become media. The medium is the message, and he understands that. That's why he can speak in a very plain-spoken vernacular, not in political speak. He's an armor-piercing shell. From the first day he came on the campaign in June of 2015 until today, the news cycle's Trump.
He's taken over people's brains.
He has. You could not be politically correct and defeat the Clinton apparatus or the Clinton junta. You need to be a blunt force instrument.
Do you really think that she is more corrupt than, say, President Trump?
I don't think Trump's corrupt. I don't think he's corrupt. No, he's certainly, I don't think he's corrupt. He comes from outside the government. He's a real estate guy.
You can be corrupt outside the government.
Has he been in lawsuits and had bankruptcies? That's the real estate business. You know, one of the keys to the campaign was giving people permission to vote for him, right? At the end, I think there was up to like 15 to 18%, some huge number, that come to the conclusion they didn't like either candidate. That broke, I think, something like 2/3 to Trump. These are people that voted that didn't like either candidate, but picked the lesser of two evils or the agent of change.
What our job is as a people is to tell the establishment, the big money interests, the wealthy campaign contributors, the Congress, is the status quo is not working for working Americans, and we demand change.
If you had been Bernie Sanders' campaign director, would he have won?
He would have definitely been taking on Donald Trump as the Democratic nominee. There's no doubt about that. Look at the crowds he was drawing. It wasn't that he didn't have the enthusiasm. Look what he did with the millennials.
I can't tell you how annoyed my son is with me for voting for Hillary in the primary.
Oh my God, you just crushed me. How did you do that? How did you possibly vote for Hillary Clinton? I'm kind of shocked now. How could you possibly make fog of war, and how could you make what known unknowns, how could you make this and then vote for Hillary Clinton?
Because I was...
We got to swap places now.
Yeah, because I was afraid of you guys. I still am. I thought that she was the best hope of defeating Trump. And Bannon. I did it out of fear. I don't know how better to describe it.
We're at the very beginning stages of a very brutal and bloody conflict, of which if the people in this room and the people in the church do not bind together and really form what I feel is an aspect of the church militant, to really be able to not just stand with our beliefs, but to fight for our beliefs, against this new barbarity that's starting, that we will literally eradicate everything that we've been bequeathed over the last 2,000 to 2,500 years. But we are in an outright war against jihadist Islamic fascism.
What I would like to do is retrace how you became involved in all of this from, I guess, the beginnings. You're a filmmaker. Then you're the executive chairman of Breitbart. Then you're the head of the Trump campaign. And then you're a central advisor to the President of the United States. It's quite a trajectory. So let's go back to the beginning. How did this start?
You tell the story of the current war you're in by talking about a previous war. And I'll use Reagan as the instrument. And I'll tell the story about how we have to confront radical Islamic terrorism. I said, this is a real enemy. It's a real enemy that can inspire, just like in 12 O'Clock High. And so I made In the Face of Evil in 2004.
Ronald Reagan was a product of the Hollywood studio system, a system that took the story of the immigrants and pioneers' efforts to forge a country from a vast wilderness and turned it into a heroic struggle. Order versus chaos, good versus evil. Translating Western civilization's legends into simple stories that embodied the reluctant hero. These stories defined what it meant to be a man, what it took to be a hero. That freedom is a fragile thing. That evil is powerless if the good are unafraid.
When the film was shown at this conservative Hollywood Film Festival, it got like a 10-minute standing ovation at the end, and some huge bear of a guy comes barreling out of the audience and embraces me and says, we got to take the culture back, and culture's upriver from politics. And I said, who is this guy? This guy is like a giant of a man and full of life. It was Andrew Breitbart. For 5 years, I didn't make a film, and then I saw the financial crisis. I came up with the idea of telling the story to Generation Z. We're going to make an avant-garde film for right-wingers.
Now, history teaches that usually third turnings finally issue into a fourth turning. Well, a fourth turning is the crisis. And history shows that if an event doesn't trigger a fourth turning leader will actually encourage one to happen, or one will simply hit us because of all the deferred public decisions that weren't made during the recent third turning. This comes to a head in the fourth turning.
I wanted to show it to conservative thought leaders before we released it. And so I went to see Andrew Breitbart. He had started this blog site called Breitbart. He said, you know, we're really trying to turn it into a business, and I know you're an investment banker. And I said, look, if you ever need any help putting together a business plan or just thinking about financing, let's talk. He said, you know, I'd love to have somebody do that. And so he said, how about tomorrow? And I said, sure. Where are you guys headquartered? And he goes, in my basement. And we're sitting in the main room. I hadn't seen a lot of activity. It was an old blog site. It was just kind of a rudimentary site that put up, you know, stories. We were going to build an entire news site that Andrew had thought through from scratch. As often happens in life, we were late. Andrew had a lot of changes. We needed 90 more days. Now, the year before, Andrew had called in the middle of the night, and he said, I feel like I got a Volkswagen on my chest. He had genetic problems with his heart, and was in for 4 days and given a whole regimen of things to do. Of course, Andrew didn't do any of it.
CPAC has got to go! Behave yourself! Behave yourself!
Chill.
You are freaks and animals! You're freaks and animals! Behave yourself! Behave yourself! Learn to behave yourself! Stop raping people! Stop
We had this old warehouse, and he would work every night there till like 10 or 11 o'clock, and there was a restaurant that was open till midnight, and he would go to the bar and have a quick bite to eat before going home. Sat next to a guy and has dinner, paid his bill, shook this guy's hand, walked outside to get his car, and dropped dead right on the street in front of the restaurant. Dead by the time he hit the pavement. Talked to his widow, Susie. She said, hey, he's dedicated his life to this site. On Sunday night at 8 o'clock, make sure the curtain comes up. And that was the beginning of the weaponized platform that was the backbone of the populist media. You have someone who comes along once in a generation. He knew new media. He had this strong sense of how people come to the news in a different way. And he really had this extraordinary vision of what he wanted to do with Breitbart.
You also had some deeper understanding of the internet. Can we talk about IGE?
Yeah. In the early 2000s, Wall Street was already thinking through this whole concept of alternative currencies coming out of massively multiplayer video games. World of Warcraft was one of them. Gold is generated, or things are generated in that game, and there's a massive aftermarket for it. And so investment banks, sophisticated investment banks, like Goldman Sachs, were always on the lookout for what were alternative currencies. We bought like 35 exchanges.
35 exchanges, what does that mean?
People need weapons, they need spells. So the gold is an alternative currency. The aftermarket trading of that is tens of billions of dollars. If you went to Kowloon, if you went to Hong Kong in the early days, you'd walk out, it was a trading floor. Of the 250 employees, 245 were young men. They're in games generating gold. I became the interim CEO. We were generating a tremendous amount of cash per month. And then all of a sudden, several million accounts were wiped off by the game manufacturer. The game manufacturer basically said if you show up with a social security number or a country ID to show that you're a real person, you get your gold back. Well, that wipe-off was, let's say, in the neighborhood of $90 million. This was just not an alternative currency, it was a currency. And so Stephen K. Bannon, you got us into this, and that would help sort it out. And the one thing that struck me is, because I'm not a video game person, I've never played a video game in my life. Never played a video game. And I said, wow, people spend an awful lot of time in these video games. 35, 40, 45, 50 hours a week. People with incomes of $75, $80, $100,000 with wives and kids. Now, I don't know if this happened or not, but there's a guy, Dave, in the accounts payable department. He weighs 250 pounds. He drops dead of a heart attack in his cubicle. He's got a wife and 2 kids that don't really know him. Some preacher from a church or some guy from the funeral home that's never met him does a 10-minute eulogy, says a few prayers, and they've got one of these perpetual cemeteries, and Dave's urn goes down there. And that's Dave. Dave in the game, he's Ajax. And Ajax is like the man. When it comes to burying Ajax, they're going to put him on a caisson, and they're going to take it up for a funeral pyre, and they're going to burn the digital Ajax. There's literally thousands of people there. Their rival group that hates these guys attacks the funeral thing. People are home playing the game, and guys are not going to work, and women are not going to work because it's Ajax. Now, who's more real? Dave in accounting that's in the urn, his analog self, or is it Ajax? People take on these digital selves that are a more perfected version of themselves and where they can control things in a digital way that they can't control in the analog world. Remember John Ford? My Darling Clementine? That's an idealized version of the American West. That's what these digital communities provide to people. That's what are provided to Ajax and not Dave. That eventually became my idea for the comment section of Breitbart, which built the Breitbart community and is not for the faint of heart. This became more of a community than the city they live in, or the town they live in, that the old bowling league, the old Kiwanis Club, the old softball team, to a large extent, was being replaced by this.
You brought the old bowling league to Breitbart?
And it's like sedimentary rock. The key to these sites was the comment section. This could be weaponized at some point in time. The angry voices, properly directed, have latent political power. Caught the Republican Party completely unaware and drove much of the momentum of Trump, and also added to the traffic of Breitbart and to Breitbart's prominence and power. He's very superstitious. There was no concession speech written and there was no victory speech written. Wouldn't do it.
I look very much forward to being your president. And I can only say that while the campaign is over, our work on this movement is now really just beginning.
Remember, at 5 o'clock in the evening, we're told we're going to lose in a historic landslide. I think on those exit polls, she wins something like 400 electoral votes in the House, in the Senate, in the Supreme Court, and life is changed in perpetuity. That's 8 hours before. And every newsroom is getting ready and they're all high-fiving, and Megyn Kelly's got that big smirk on her face like, oh, this is going to be over at 8 o'clock. You know, Miller and Bannon and the others at 2:30, we're not sitting there saying, let's have a group hug. Say, you know, we just did it, and now we're going to march on the Capitol and throw out all of them. I mean, drop the hammer. That's how we won. That's what people voted for. And it was Donald Trump that said, I think what we ought to try to do tonight is bring people together. Let's de-escalate. A couple days later, the resistance is in the streets. The signs, and people are so upset about this thing. He actually said, I thought it'd be different. I thought the New York Times would be wishing me well and everything like that. And I said, you do understand they hate you. They literally detest you. Everything you ran on, everything you stand for, everything you won on. And the people that support you, they detest. This is going to be trench warfare every day. And by the way, I'm the enabler, and I take great pride in it, that just here's what we ran on, here's what we said we're going to do. Let's just do it. You're not a politician, you're a leader. Don't act like a politician. Just do it. You know, build the wall, eradicate ISIS, right? Get manufacturing jobs back here, confront China, get us out of Afghanistan, get us out of Iraq. Just do what you said you're going to do.
The inaugural address, American Carnage, did you write that?
The president wrote that.
Come on.
It's President Trump's speech. The only thing I told Miller is we should have the podium turned around. Trump should address it to all the elites in Washington, D.C. sitting in back of him. If you look at the inner cities in this country, if you look at the industrial heartland of this country, there has been carnage. Globalization has brought carnage with it, and it's got to be called that. The people that are most offended about that's the mainstream media and the globalists. Bush hated the speech. He said later, that thing's crazy or something. He made some really derogatory comment.
Everyone is listening to you now. You came by the tens of millions to become part of a historic movement, the likes of which the world has never seen before. At the center of this movement is a crucial conviction that a nation exists to serve its citizens. Americans want great schools for their children, safe neighborhoods for their families, and good jobs for themselves. These are just and reasonable demands of righteous people. But for too many of our citizens, a different reality exists. Mothers and children trapped in poverty in our inner cities. Rusted out factories scattered like tombstones across the landscape. An education system flush with cash, but which leaves our young and beautiful students deprived of all knowledge. And the crime, and the gangs, and the drugs that have stolen too many lives and robbed our country of so much unrealized potential. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now.
Do you ever see yourself just hastening the end of everything?
I don't think we've hastened enough. We're either going to make some fundamental changes or you're going to have a revolution. People say I'm apocalyptic. I think I'm just a rationalist. You know, I foresaw someone like Trump coming along. People say, oh, this was so unexpected. Someone says, no, it wasn't unexpected. It was clear as daylight.
Can't you be an apocalyptic rationalist?
I am an apocalyptic rationalist. I'm not an apocalyptic emotionalist. I'm a rationalist. I'm saying if we don't make changes, we're going to have an apocalypse. Let's make some changes.
Do you know what will happen to me if the bread is not ready in time? I haven't the foggiest. I'll have to kill myself. What would you do if you are me?
I suppose if I were you, I'd have to kill myself. Cheers.
It gets back to the concept of Dharma, right? It's his duty, his destiny, his fate, and his obligation. He thinks to get his men through this. I will create civilization in the middle of the horrors of a prison camp, hundreds of miles from civilization. Walking on the bridge on the evening before it's finished. Talks about his life in India, talks about his life as an officer. What is this all about? He's really talking about Dharma. Did I accomplish anything? Did my life have any purpose? Did my life have any meaning? His swagger stick falls out of his hand and falls into the River Kwai. He says, oh, these are the thoughts that cloud one's head.
That's why I find the movies you've picked so interesting. In many of them, the hero has some utter collapse. In 12 O'Clock High, Gregory Peck just...
breaks him.
It breaks him.
Yep.
This is different. Alec Guinness, in his desire to adhere to the code of officer conduct, actually loses sight of why he's there in the first place.
He realizes that the whole thing of the properness and the Britishness and what officers did and everything like that, it was ultimately to defeat their enemy, the Japanese, and that's why he says, "What have I done?"
What have I done?
And he falls, and it's his body that hits the detonator and blows the bridge up.
Could you imagine yourself being in a similar position?
I think anybody could. You have to call into question and hold yourself personally accountable. Or you could end up like Colonel Nicholson. You realize, hey, maybe this populist nationalist movement is more destructive than beneficial. You have decisions. General Savage had decisions, and Nicholson has decisions. And the Judeo-Christian West were made in the image and likeness of God. We're fallen.
I was reading about Lucifer in Milton's Paradise Lost. And I have to say that Lucifer, for me, had certain Bannon-esque qualities.
He's the interesting character in Paradise Lost.
Rather reign in hell
Than serve in heaven. Love that line. I use it all the time.
You do?
Oh, yeah, all the time. There's a lot of truth to that. I think it was the 28th or 29th of December. President Obama put sanctions on the Russians, including this fairly dramatic send 35 people home to Russia in reaction to interference in the 2016 campaign. I thought it was unusual. So all I said was, let's have Trump see exactly what Obama saw. And let him be briefed by the same people in the exact same presentation. No more and no less.
You're the one who asked for it.
Demanded it. You see, to be fair to Donald Trump, let's talk about the establishment. Leave how fucked up all these guys think he is. He's going to be president of the United States, whether you like it or not. And you have a responsibility to this country and to its people to make sure that it's a smooth transition. What was agreed to, there would be a presentation. I got DNI here, I got CIA here, I got NSA here, I got my official stamp, right? It's a good effect. I said, come on down, let's see that presentation.
The way I've read
Hang on. Now you get me worked up. It turns out that Comey, the head of the FBI, had a sidebar package. It kind of felt like either a raw file or what's in the very early stages of a field report. And that's what I get upset about. How come it's not an appendix in the presentation? You know why it's not an appendix? Because they were all set to leak this to the media. And surprise, surprise. What was it, 24, 48 hours later? BuzzFeed launched it, and then everybody did a story about the story, which is the easy way out, the cheat. Remember, I ran Breitbart. I know the game. A site like BuzzFeed got a little looser standards than the paper of record. So they put it up, and then the New York Times does a story about the story and links to the whole thing. And then it's a global story. Is that the way the establishment is supposed to roll? Is that the game you want to play? You want to play that game? You don't think our institutions are rotten at its core?
Comey said that when Trump was apprised of the Steele dossier, he was just interested in damage control.
Right. I think what's unfair for Comey to say that. You're presenting a guy that he's paying prostitutes in a foreign capital to do these kind of perverse sex acts. So I don't know.
I was speaking to him and briefing him about some salacious and unverified material. It was in the context of that he had a strong and defensive reaction about that not being true. And my reading of it was important for me to assure him we were not personally investigating him. I was worried very much about being in kind of a J. Edgar Hoover type situation. I didn't want him thinking that I was briefing him on this to sort of hang it over him in some way. I was briefing him on it because we had been told by the media it was about to launch.
And what about the weirdness of Trump saying why he fired Comey is because of Comey's handling of Hillary's emails, and then backtracking? I wouldn't even call it backtracking, because backtracking indicates that you know that you're backtracking, and then just saying, but now I'm going to fire him because he's getting obsessed with Russia.
Did you ask for a recommendation?
What I did is I was going to fire Comey. My decision. It was not...
You had made the decision before they came in the room.
I was going to fire Comey. There's no good time to do it, by the way.
Because in your letter you said I accepted their recommendation.
Yeah, well,
so you had already made the decision.
I was going to fire regardless of recommendation.
So there was really
when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story. It's an excuse by the Democrats for having lost an election.
In the White House, I'm another Schmendrick. I'm just an advisor. I'm just another voice around the table. I would give the president my opinion with the bark on. I said, Director Comey should stay, finish out his investigation. Just from a practical point of view, I saw it decelerating. And you could tell the reporters were tired of it. There was no more squeeze in the lemon. It just didn't have the juice. Firing Comey doesn't mean the investigation is going to stop. The FBI's got an investigation. And I said, if you fire him, two things are going to happen. As night follows day, within a week, they're going to name a special counsel. And the special counsel is going to have a writ that's going to be so broad, you're just not going to fire the head of the FBI doing an investigation. And they're just going to sit there and go, okay, that's fine. The institution of the FBI is going to bleed you out because they have to. It calls into question the institutions in this country and the establishment. There has been from the beginning a nullification project on the 2016 election. And if they can't nullify it, at least question his legitimacy so much that he can't govern. People say, oh, this is a deep state, deep state. It's not the deep state. That's the in-your-face state. It's not a deep state. It's sitting right there on the surface.
Bannon was CEO of the Trump campaign.
Now seen as one of the most powerful people in the White House.
The force behind many of Trump's early moves, a member of the National Security Council.
To be clear, this has never been done before.
One of the most mysterious players in the president's inner circle.
The puppet master behind President Trump.
her reputation as an influential behind-the-scenes string puller.
This executive order has made Bannon much more of a target in Washington.
His controversial views on Islam.
Stirring racial hatred in the United States.
Doubling down on increasing people's fear and hatred.
He's a stone-cold racist.
And his extreme political agenda remains deeply troubling.
The most powerful person in the White House right now, including the president.
Were you the principal author of the travel ban?
Stephen Miller was one of the chief architects of many of the initial executive orders. I thought the extreme vetting executive order, which you call the travel ban, it's a very pragmatic thing about extreme vetting.
Look, it bothered me because I felt that it was inherently racist.
This is the protection of the nation from foreign terrorist entry into the United States. You all know what that means.
I think the media completely overplayed that.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on. We have no choice. We have no choice.
We did want to hit on day one and just start to really flood the zone with executive orders. It now is the hour of action. The media can only handle like one thing at the time. If you're giving them 5 things a day, right, 3 of them you can kind of get through.
The idea is they go into sensory overload.
Exactly. They do.
Where you have the chaos at the airports, people who have a legitimate purpose in this country being excluded. There's a certain kind of meanness and racism at the heart of this.
You think it's racist?
I do believe that this whole thing about walls and immigration isn't really about economic populism. I think it is about racism. Do people really think that this border wall is going to suddenly provide jobs for them? No, I think they don't like Mexicans, or they don't like Arabs, or they don't like Jews. Well, let's go to a distasteful subject, Charlottesville.
It was a weekend of street battles and stark displays of racism, exploding into a deadly act of domestic terror.
Tonight, hundreds of white nationalists from across the country descended upon the University of Virginia's campus ahead of a planned demonstration to protest the removal of the statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee.
You will not replace us. You will not replace us. Jews will not replace us. You will not replace us. Jews 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 will not replace us.
Look, reasonable people can disagree about the Confederate monuments. The original protest of, I think we ought to put shrouds on the statues of General Lee and General Jackson, or remove them, versus people that say, no, this is part of Southern heritage and Southern culture, it's not racist, and they should be honored. And guess what? There are decent people on both sides of that argument.
White lives matter! 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 Pull the fuck up! Hey! Hey!
Get him off! Get him off the time! They're beating the fuck out of him!
You then go down to the next guys, these neo-Nazis or whatever. Those guys, they have no standing, okay? And when they show up, they should be shut down. They're bad guys. okay? And they're a creation of the opposition party media. They're meaningless in this Trump move. They're meaningless in the populist move. They're totally, completely meaningless.
Just see that? A car just plowed through hundreds of people downtown Charlottesville. Holy we need the ambulances.
It's not conservative media that's given it a platform. It's the left media. It's MSNBC. And Huffington Post, you got the left.
There's something incredibly perverse about saying that neo-Nazis are creation of the mainstream media.
No, because they're creation of how big and important and how a place they have. They don't have any place.
At Breitbart News, Steve Bannon provided a platform for alt-right groups who have links to white supremacists.
A man who proudly promoted right-wing nationalism inside the White House and beyond.
Tell us how you're feeling about your chief strategist, Mr. Bannon.
I never spoke to Mr. Bannon about it.
Tell us broadly what you're. Do you still have confidence
Well,
in
we'll
Steve?
see. And look. I like Mr. Bannon. He's a friend of mine. But Mr. Bannon came on very late. You know that. I went through 17 senators, governors, and I won all the primaries. Mr. Bannon came on very much later than that. And I like him. He's a good man. He is not a racist, I can tell you that. He's a good person. He actually gets a very unfair press in that regard. But we'll see what happens with Mr. Bannon.
Wits, know you what 'tis you say. My king, my Joe. I speak to thee, my heart.
I know thee not, old man. Fall to thy prayers. How ill white hairs become a fool and jester. I have long dreamed of such a kind of man. So surfeit swelled, so old, and so profane. But being awaked, I do despise my dream. Presume not that I am the thing I was. For God doth know, so shall the world perceive, that I have turned away my former self. So will I those that kept me company. When thou dost hear I am as I have been, approach me. And thou shalt be as thou wast, the tutor and the feeder of my riots. Till then, I banish thee on pain of death, as I have done the rest of my misleaders, not to come near our person by 10 miles.
Falstaff is the very human element of Henry V. He really shows him what it is to be a full person, takes him through the transition to manhood. He's saying, I'm now the King of England. And it's just not going to work. I guess the irony is that the Trump-Bannon relationship, I could see that in watching it, that, you know, banished from the kingdom.
Do you think that Falstaff was betrayed?
Not at all. I think it's go back to 12 o'clock high. It's his dharma. That's his duty. He is now the King of England. He's not the young man who was unformed when Falstaff met him. And he understands that Falstaff can have no role in that. I didn't take it personally. I think the look on Falstaff's face at the end is projecting that Falstaff understands that too, that this had to happen. This is the logical order of things.
I would never have interpreted it that way.
How would you interpret it?
I saw it as a betrayal.
Why a betrayal?
Because Falstaff gave him everything.
He did give him everything. But remember, Sir John Falstaff knows the entire time that this guy is going to be the King of England. It's almost like he's training Henry V. Clearly at the end, he thinks he's going to get, as he tells his buddy, I ran the campaign, now I'm going to be senior strategist, all right? I got a special deal. And you're told you're not. To look at Falstaff at the end, at least to me, he understands that it's not really a betrayal. It's the natural order of things. The film is based upon the beginnings of the mutiny, when the French soldiers said, we're not going to do this anymore. They couldn't take being treated like animals. That's the deplorables right there. The officers and the politicians are all in these chateaus, they're having balls. It's the deplorables that are in the trenches, living like rats, with rats. I'd like to have those guys in the trenches make decisions, but that's the problem. It's the elites making the decisions. Think of all the bad decisions been made on globalism by this kind of scientific, engineering, managerial, financial elite. Look at where the country is. Look at where working class people are. Look where the middle class is, particularly from the financial crisis. People have been getting fucked. It's as obvious as the nose in your face. We have a consolidation of power. We have a consolidation of wealth. You have to tell the establishment, go fuck yourself. You just have to.
I call him the fuck you president. Because all of those people, all they've wanted to do is to say to people, hey you, go fuck yourself. Fuck you. He's the fuck you president. You want health care? Fuck you. You want clean drinking water? Fuck you.
What the little guy wants is the fuck you to the establishment. I'm on a mission to try to remake the Republican Party into more of a workers' party. And some days we have good days, and more days we have bad days. It's not easy, because the money and the power is on their side.
But why channel people's hatred of the other?
And your assumption is that it's something of the other. It is not about the other. Everything that we've been focused on is about American citizens. This is not about the other. This is about maximizing the value of your citizenship.
But President Trump's economic nationalism does not care about your race, your religion, your ethnicity, or your gender. It doesn't care about your sexual preference. It cares about one thing. Are you a citizen of the United States? I can tell you one thing after going all over the world, history is on our side. The globalists have no answers to freedom. Let them call you racist. Let them call you xenophobes. Let them call you nativist. Wear it as a badge of honor.
When I walk in, 80 or 90% of the audience spits on the floor. Because here you have this racist, nativist, really bad guy. If it's not for him, Donald Trump wouldn't be president. I hit them with the exact same punchline, which I did with Front National in Zurich. You may be better fed, better clothed, in better shape than 18th century Russian serfs, but you're nothing but serfs. You're not going to own anything. They've got you in this consumer environment where you're always paying off your credit cards. They've destroyed thrift, so you can't save anything. Saving doesn't make any difference. And then digitally, they've taken all your rights, they've taken all your personhood, and they've written these algorithms to treat you like a hamster. You're totally controlled, absolutely totally controlled. I harken back to 12 o'clock high. You can't fulfill your destiny. You can't fulfill your Dharma. You can't do it. You're nothing but a serf. You voted for that. And you're a reflective, smart person. You actually thought about it and made a conscious decision. Why? Oh, I fear you. I fear Trump. I fear... It's bullshit.
Just to clarify, my fear is that Trump represented nothing.
It's going to be a revolution in this country. It's coming. Can't kick the can down the road like this. We can't. We're going to have another financial crisis that everybody that's smart sees is coming.
What would revolution mean? What are we talking about here?
A complete rejection of the system. It's going to cut like a scythe through grass. It is coming.